All right, so as of shooting this, which is like 2 weeks or so before Halloween, my plan is, as of now, is that this one is the one that goes up on Halloween. So we should be pretty much at the end of me doing this whole run of things for the last 2 months by the time this is out. So I figured this would be a decent place to end on such a beloved movie, and then two that I'm not so sure. I'm not really honestly sure what the consensus is on Returns.
The CGI is bad.
Yeah, because I feel like it's. I think the reason is I always remember Returns being not as well liked and being the really dated one, but that was before Tomb of the Dragon Emperor happened, and everybody hated it, and it made Returns look good by comparison. Mm-hmm. Because Tomb of the Dragon Emperor is basically the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull of Mummy movies.
Plus, The Mummy Returns took away Adebisi from Oz. You don't know that, but I do.
Who is that?
He was on Oz.
Oh yeah, I put that together.
he's insane.
Mm-hmm. So and obviously we talk about how the progression and how one might look better now compared to another one. Mm-hmm. And so the idea here is the first one has always had a good reputation, but it seems to have really, really grown over time, and people really, really love it. And it's not necessarily just a nostalgia factor, which certainly plays a part in it, I'm sure, but it seems like new generations are finding it too, and it's becoming this really, really beloved thing, especially with the whole resurgence of Brendan Fraser and how much people kind of built that up before it finally happened. The fact that they tried to do the whole Dark Universe thing with Tom Cruise's movie, and people hated that one so much that I feel like that only raised the love for the '99 movie even more. So, some people do I don't mean to be pedantic, but some people do stuff that do something that drives me a little crazy, which is when they want to put down Tom Cruise's movie, they'll refer to the '99 movie as the original. When like Boris Karloff exists too, but the thing is this movie pretty much, the 1999 movie pretty much has nothing to do with Karloff's movie, but there is a movie from Karloff's era, not he's not in it, but it's from that era, called The Mummy's Hand, and The Mummy's Hand story is pretty much this one, the '99 movie. It's just obviously not like a big action movie like this one is. And we were talking, and I remember vividly how popular these were, and I remember you seeing Returns in the theater. Do you remember much about your first run-in with the '99 movie?
I think I saw it on TV, like on cable.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it was on like TNT.
Oh, that like it wasn't even on one of the movie channels. Oh, I can't remember how long after its release this would have been. I remember we were at the neighbor's house, and they had it on because they were the neighbors that like always they'd always go to the theater for like all the new movies, basically what I do now, and then they'd rent those movies when they came out, and that was the '90s basically. And when we were over there, they were watching it, and I saw like the second hour, and I would have been like 9 at the time, 9 or 10. And I remember being into it. Like, even though I was like watching it vaguely and didn't really know what the story was because I came in the middle of it, I remember it grabbing me, and I remember it feeling like this sort of, in retrospect, like the really sort of classic adventure movie. Like, oh, it's clear they're going for like Indiana Jones vibes, but also something like even more, like there were some classic adventure.
Less Raiders and more like Temple of Doom.
Yeah. And in the 50s also there was kind of a trend of like adventure movies, and it seems like it's kind of reaching that era a little bit also, but also with all those like horror tones as well. Not a shitload of horror tones, but like more so in this one than I think the other ones, because the other ones get a bit more silly as they go. But this one has like, I remember the creepy whispering at the beginning, when we first, like Rick's first big action scene.
And like some of the visuals when the mummy like starts forming and he like drains people.
Yeah. And the way that there's so many iconic images in the first movie involving sand. Like there's the face in the sand, and then when the sand comes through the keyhole, or like images that are like branded in my brain forever.
And then you had the scene where the guy's eyes were missing for a little bit before he lost his skin.
Yeah, that's another thing I wanted to mention. That I saw this movie so young. It was pretty terrifying. Like, it wasn't, like, traumatizing, but, like I remember when, like, Jonathan Hyde's body is revealed post-mortem, it being pretty terrifying, and, are they called scarabs? The scarabs are life-changing. Like, they look... they look very CGI now, and, like, when they're under the skin, they look very CGI now. But just the concept of them, they're basically like piranha for land, basically. They can burrow in your skin, and that's pretty fucking terrifying. One of the other things I really remember that I carried forever, from the memory of the first time I saw it, was Benny's death, that we don't even see, but the idea of being encased in darkness with that sound coming for you is petrifying. And Kevin J. O'Connor plays that fear very well, multiple times throughout. Benny's such a fuck up, but in such a fun and lovable way also, but in also kind of that antagonistic way that's fun to see the banter between him and Rick throughout it.
Especially since he's such a weasel.
Yeah.
Like, even when, like, how he gets involved with the Emotep in the first place, where he's just cycling through religions until he finds one that works.
He was... do you say it's safe to say that Kevin J... You can still see this today, even when he's in stuff. Kevin J. O'Connor was Walton Goggins before Walton Goggins. like if this exact movie was made now, I don't know that Kevin J. O'Connor... Well, no, he might have, because Stephen Sommers had done, like, Deep Rising with him and stuff like that. Yeah, so... another thing that... Should we talk about Brendan Fraser as an action hero? Because I feel like that's something that a lot of people... Like, I didn't realize at the time, apparently, how loved Brendan Fraser actually was, because a lot of his movies, critically, were really, really ripped apart. But then, like, the more this movie got its beloved status, the more people were saying, like, he was kind of like one of the action heroes of the 90s.
And plus, I think with, like, his delivery and, like, his looks, he comes across as very wholesome.
Yeah, and it's interesting that he finds that, because when we first see him, like when he's getting ready to be executed, he looks like really almost like haggard, and like he's one of those, like I'm trying to figure out, like
it's like when they first find Link.
Yeah. And it's like he doesn't have a shred of like the stuff that we see later, but we get to kind of see that gradually come out of him, especially with his relationship with Evelyn, kind of bringing that out a little bit. But would you say he works as like kind of that sort of... it's such a cliche, because pretty much any sort of like adventure lead is going to be called like an Indiana Jones type. But, you know, going for that Indiana Jones type, would you say he pulls that off pretty well? I
would say so. He's less rugged than Indy. Because Harrison Ford just has an air of grumpiness to him, but...
Yeah, it's like I think it's because we knew him so much for his comedies at the time, is why I never really thought about him being such a definitive action hero in this particular role, in this particular movie, really. And it's like when there's people that are often introduced to Brendan Fraser through this movie, and they're able to immediately see him as that, and then the comedies might come later. So I do wonder what it would have been like
he was a very big staple of the 90s, because he was like, you know, you had the comedies going, you had like Blast from the Past, Encino Man, Airheads,
George of the Jungle.
George of the Jungle.
And then I feel like the downfall started with W, right? Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Not that we're saying like, you know, George of the Jungle is like high tier.
I mean, Thomas Hayden Church was involved though.
Yeah, but much as we all love Thomas Hayden Church, he was in the direct-to-video sequel too. So that's... But... Well, don't ask me why I know that. I can hear you judging me. But, so, talking about how his character progresses through Evelyn. If you're not new to this channel or these videos, you know that, just in general, I find Rachel Weisz pretty overrated.
You're not a fan of Mrs. Craig?
No. She has about as much charisma as her husband, pre-Knives Out. Pre-Logan Lucky, whatever you want to say.
Pretty much anytime he's not in a comedy, for you.
Yeah. So, how do you...
You've often said that Daniel Craig should pivot to comedy.
Absolutely. Like, he's more than proven that at this point. But, how do you feel about... I don't know, have you seen Rachel Weisz in much outside of this?
No.
Yeah, because you haven't seen, like, The Favorite yet or anything, have you? But, how do you feel about her as Evelyn? And watch what you say, she's got fans. She's got a lot of fans.
I mean, honestly, she's just kind of there.
What I think is interesting, is that a vehicle?
It's a helicopter going to the hospital.
Okay.
But I think it's like we were talking about with Temple of Doom. Like, she's more of a... They treat her as a Marion Ravenwood, but she's more like a Willie.
Ooh,
in some aspects.
You're in such dangerous territory.
No, but I mean, like they want her to be like this intelligent, like badass almost, but they build her up as being this clumsy person that's just kind of in over her head.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. In the opening scene alone, where she knocks over all the bookcases, and then she looks klutzy, but then like she immediately lists like all of her strengths, and it's like which character is she? And it's like maybe they're trying to do both at the same time, but it does seem like they're trying to do one a lot more than the other, and they almost kind of abandon anything that's set up by the bookcases thing. As great as that scene is, and I love how
especially the fact that it's a practical effect.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. Yeah. Which they try to do. They try to recreate in Returns with the kid picking up that from her, but it's like once again, that seems to be the only time she really has that problem. Every time else, she's like, you know, this competent heroine throughout it, until she's the damsel in distress, which they try to downplay by bringing up the term damsel in distress, but just because you call it out doesn't necessarily mean that's not still there. You know, but like I said, Evelyn as a character has a lot of fans. There is a girl that I'm like really good friends with, like practically best friends with, and she is kind of like self-admittedly obsessed with this movie. And she's seen like everything under the sun. She introduces me to stuff I've never heard of. And I've seen like almost 14,000 movies. And she is like unapologetically... She said once in passing she's probably seen this 75 times. I don't know if that's hyperbole. And apparently she just recently saw it in the theater. And she said it's that movie that she can always come back to. Like all the time and never get tired of it. And I've heard so many people say that, and I so badly want to be there with it. And I try, and I can definitely see strengths in it and see how people see that as like this sort of great throwback movie that's like this constant adventure. It's like the ultimate blockbuster. It's got all the action, all the effects, but also like the comedy and all that stuff.
Do you think it's a movie that more of the flaws come from behind the scenes and in front of the camera?
That could be.
Like the people in it are doing the best they can with what they have.
Are you talking?
Like at the end of the day, you're not going to say it's Brendan Fraser's fault or Rachel Weisz's fault that it's not that great.
I was going to say, if you want to start shit talking Stephen Sommers, me and Stephen Sommers don't get along very well. He did. Well, I don't know. He's got some stuff. It's interesting to look at his filmography because he did like the Huck Finn movie with Elijah Wood, which is like really fun. And honestly, the first G.I. Joe movie is kind of a guilty pleasure for me. But he is responsible for shit like Van Helsing as well. And I see...
You hate Van Helsing.
And when I think Stephen Sommers, the first things that come to mind are The Mummy and Van Helsing. Because they're in that realm. Not just because it's all like Universal monsters, but they feel like they're in the realm as far as like their execution a little bit. This is... I mean, don't get me wrong. The first Mummy is significantly better than Van Helsing in pretty much every possible way. I don't want to say that like I'm comparing them in any way, but those are the things. And we talked about like Deep Rising for a second, which is just what it is.
I don't even know what it is.
It's like a monster movie, but it's like set on a boat. I think my memory of it is so vague. There was
Just by the title, I figured a boat was involved.
There was a jet ski chase in it.
Oh.
That tells you everything you need to know. But somebody we haven't talked about yet. Oh, were we going to say more about Stephen Summers, or are we just going to bash Van Helsing and move on? I think Summers fumbled a lot more in Returns, but we can talk about that when Returns kind of comes. It seems like we kind of are going in order. We're talking about the first one here. We'll finish up the first one and then we'll go into
Well,
Returns.
it also seems like most of his movies, I'm not terribly familiar with his filmography, but is Mummy Returns the only sequel that he did?
Because I'm pretty sure he didn't do Retaliation. Mm-hmm. So that could be.
Maybe it was just one of those cases where, like, he pulled off the first one so well, it was hard to follow up with it.
Yeah, he feels like he's not as on the grid as he once was. Mm-hmm. Like in this era and in that mid-2000s era. I was trying to remember the last movie he did.
I can tell you.
Yeah. Because I almost said Leave Extraordinary Gentleman, but that was Stephen Norrington. But doesn't Leave Extraordinary Gentleman feel like a Stephen Summers movie?
Kinda, yeah.
And of course
I still can't believe that's Sean Connery's last movie.
Yeah, that's. But yeah. So as far as that, because Summers was obviously very heavily involved in the writing as well.
I had to type his whole name for IMDb to even pull him up.
Oh my God, that's a bad sign. Mm-hmm. The last movie Stephen Summers did was,
He only directed 11 Things. Odd Thomas in 2013.
Wow. I forgot that was even his.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's that Anton Yelchin movie. Mm-hmm. That was kind of like it was. I mean, even though it does sort of deal in similar territory a little bit, it felt different than his normal movies.
Because you had Catch Me If You Can in '89, not DiCaprio's. Mm-hmm. The Adventures of Huck Finn in '93, The Jungle Book in '94, Deep Rising in '98, The Mummy in '99, Mummy Returns in '01, Van Helsing in '04. He did the Mummy Ride stuff. G.I. Joe in '09, Odd Thomas in '13. That's it.
I forgot. He did the live action Jungle Book also. Mm-hmm.
He hasn't written anything since Odd Thomas either.
Because I remember he single-handedly wrote Returns. Mm-hmm. Which says a lot. But how do you... Is there much to be said about the writing in the first movie? Because it's mostly just the... I mean, I guess you could say the comedy bit. Somebody I really want to praise in this video as much as I can is John Hannah. John Hannah, who is absolute gold at all times. Those little 2 episodes he did of Taskmaster. I really wish he had done a full season. But... how do you feel about that character of Jonathan? Because typically in these kind of movies, the comedy relief will be very, very hit and miss. Either the characters will be a total hit, or they'll be the most annoying part, and you hope that they die at some point. Mm-hmm. And John Hannah's in all 3 movies. It seems to get more and more screen time as it goes on. Mm-hmm. And if there's one thing I don't have a problem with amongst all 3 movies, it would be the John Hannahs in all 3 of them. Mm-hmm. As I said, even when he's doing, because he does the silliness of the comedy relief so perfectly, that's a very fine line. And somehow he managed to find it. There's some scenes he has that just kill me, like when the mob is coming and they're all chanting Imhotep's name, and he has to try to blend in. Mm-hmm. Kills me every time. He's got some great lines in Returns also. I love the bit when they say that the kid has to stay behind and guard the car when they go into the museum. And he turns to the kid and he says, "Now watch everything, and if you see someone come out screaming, don't worry, it's just me." And it's that's the stuff that really helps us. But I do love that they don't completely put the comedy relief entirely on his shoulders. Like the fact that Rick is also a comedic character. And Evelyn is, to a certain extent as well. Plus you got Amma Jalili bumbling around. And it's... I've never known quite sure how to take his character. I do, because I think he's basically here to just hate. Mm-hmm. Like the moment when Rick is tying the knot and he's just whacking him with it the whole time. He's basically just here for us to wait for him to die. And he is like one of the first major deaths. And then it's John Hannah takes his alcohol and says like, he smelled bad, but he had a good day. It's John Hannah there with the golden one-liners, always there to save the day. He may not save the day all the time as far as like action sequences, but his humor will always save the day. What do you think about like the story itself? Like how it does kind of have this like, ancient mythical quality to it. Like I don't know how much of that would be like stemmed from anything that's like actual mythology or anything like that, because there's so many like mummy stories. Like we were saying, the mummy's hand is basically this story-wise. But the whole cliche of don't read the books, like the Evil Dead rule. And it's like
the Book of the Dead is literally just the Necronomicon.
Yeah. and it's that thing where it's like, if they call it out for being a stupid thing to do, does that excuse the movie or not?
No.
Because you still have Rick saying there going, why are we reading the book? Like, do not read the book. Like that's something that kind of comes into Returns also, is the idea of like everything being repetitive, and they just keep calling that out. Like every time they say, oh, it's mummies or whatever's going on in the story, or something's been unleashed, it's either Rick or Jonathan saying, oh, this again. It's like, that's like what half of the Mummy Returns is them saying, oh no, this again. Yeah. Exactly.
It feels more like a TV special when you bring the cast back like 10 years later and they're like, oh, we did this.
Yeah.
Oh, we did that.
It's like, oh hey, I remember that thing. Thus it is good again, because I remember that thing you once did.
Friends Reunion is an exception, because Friends Reunion is great. And that was the whole point.
Yeah. So anyway, I name-dropped Jonathan Hyde earlier. Is he somebody that always... He was such a 90s staple as well. Whether it be this, or Richie Rich, or Jumanji. It was just like... he like defined... Titanic, oh my god. He like defined a whole era in the 90s there. Also, I love the casual sexism of the character. But it's like you can tell they're intentionally playing it up. Like, they're being led by a woman. They can't possibly accomplish anything. And then his horrible... I love the moment when they're being attacked, and he's like fleeing with his umbrella. It's like night, and there's nothing there. He's like that perfect... He's basically playing... It's basically like a continuation of Ismay from Titanic, just in a different situation, and like he's still like a cowardly rich guy. And of course, once again, his terrifying death scene where we see... That's another shot that feels kind of iconic in this. It's just the one eye like watching him. By the time the movie's in Hellraiser territory, where he's like collecting body parts and becoming whole again. It's like so very, very Hellraiser. Was there, like, talking about that sort of traumatizing stuff, was there anything that you remember specifically from your first time watching it that, like, completely stuck in your head?
The eyes. The no eyes.
Yeah.
I believe he loses his tongue, too.
Yes. And it's also kind of a Jeepers Creepers scenario, since he, like, gains them.
Yeah, and the fact that for him it ends up being a mercy killing later, essentially, when he just finishes him off. Yeah.
There is, like, for a movie that's as, like, almost lighthearted in how fun it is and the way it approaches its fun nature, I do love the darkness in it. It's got such a mean streak in it, kind of. How do you feel about,
It's kind of like a haunted house. In that way, like, welcome to our haunted house, you're gonna get scared and have fun, I'll fucking kill you! Like...
Yeah, it's like, it's not surprising that it was, like, a popular attraction. Because that's exactly what it feels like when you're watching it. And not in, not like the whole, Scorsese Marvel argument where, like, that's meant as, like, an insult. Like, that's a whole other can of worms, but, like, the whole idea of, I don't know that Scorsese meant that as an insult. He was just stating how he viewed them. And yet, but this is a movie where I think you could say without anybody arguing, and as a compliment, that it feels like a ride before it even was a ride.
It's definitely one of those movies that, like, when you're watching it, you're like, I wonder what the video game will be like. Like, back when they used to make video games off of movies, they don't really do that anymore. But
they don't.
Not really.
Yeah, I wouldn't keep track, but
Most of them are just franchises anymore, or just little random things, or sports games. Pretty much.
I know he's CGI for a lot of movies during the Hellraiser phase. But how do you feel about Arnold Vosloo and his whole sort of like he's one of those characters. He's one of those people also where it's like it's very difficult for him to be in another movie because he's so recognizable as he moves up now. Like even when he had a little bit of hair and Blood Diamond and it was so jarring.
His hair in Zeus and Roxanne, doesn't he?
I was trying to remember something else I had seen him in, and I think that's what I was thinking. Once again, much like George of the Jungle 2, why we know this exists and details about it should not be a question that's asked. So is there anything else that like mainly stands out? I mean, we could talk like for days about the production design and like the use of actual extras and what's because we were at an era where it was starting to get very CGI heavy, but there's a lot of practical stuff in it also.
Yeah, they didn't save the CGI till the second one.
Yeah, then they just went insane in like the worst way. We
didn't say anything about Oded Fur.
I do want to call him out also. I do really love him. He has a moment that I love especially. I think it's in the sequel. I think it's in Returns. When the CGI army is coming at him. And as we were talking about the CGI, everything looks fake. And remember, this is the year, I believe Returns was the year Fellowship came out. Fellowship would have come out that December. Which means that CGI and stuff like that was like reaching up. Like it was reaching a new status of like Peter Jackson was saying, this is what CGI is capable of. So anything in that realm that looks like the CGI that's in the Mummy Returns just looks worse. Because we know what we could have had. And we could have been capable of. But we got, instead, whatever the hell we got. And Oded Fehr has this whole CGI army coming at him. And he's clearly looking at nothing. Like, it's clear to us, even when we see the army, it's clear there's fucking nothing there. Like, even the place they're standing probably isn't really there. But holy shit, that look on his face when he's staring them down, that looks like a man staring his death down. It's like, there's nothing there. And it's like, that's fucking acting.
But then they kind of lighten him up in the second one, too.
Yeah. I mean, I think because he's just so charming, because Oded Fehr is kind of amazing in general. Like, I think we both first saw him in Despicable, right? And that, like, even in that, stupid moment after the action scene in the second one when he says, like, this was my first bus ride. It's like, any other actor, maybe apart from John Hannah saying that, would have just been, oh, what a stupid line. But Oded Fehr or John Hannah can make it work. And it's like they bring that something. It feels like they're bringing a lot over of what worked in the first movie into Returns as much as they can. Because even Rick probably isn't as entertaining in Returns, is he? But
the most entertaining thing in Returns is when the little creatures hold up the dynamite and they're raring to go and then they explode.
There was something else I wanted to mention about Evelyn before we move on entirely to the second one. But it might seem a little petty, so I wasn't even sure if I was going to bring it up, but talking about her being like the damsel in distress kind of character, even though she's also supposed to be like, the epitome of, female co-star strength or whatever, there are 2 or 3 moments in the first movie that are probably like my least favorite moments in the whole movie, and they're small. They're really tiny, to the point that you're probably wondering, why would you get so mad about that? I just hate it, and I hate it for the character. I hate the way it plays. I hate everything about it. There are 2 or 3 moments, so many I lost count. There are 2 or 3 moments when she is in Amenhotep's grasp, and everybody's coming. It's the first time is when they're flying in, and the sandstorm happens. And Evelyn looks up and says O'Connell's name in the most swooning way possible. Like, her hero is here to save the day, and I swear to God, like, 5 minutes later, they hear a gun go off, and she knows O'Connell is here and he's coming.
Mm-hmm.
It's the exact fucking same delivery. It's like, you know, this... it's like, O'Connell, the hero is here, and then... again later, and then I think she says it again later during the fight, and it's like, for God's sake, shut the fuck up about O'Connell already. We know he's here. And it's like, it's building him up, but it's like, she's supposed to be as strong as him. But it's like her miracle has come to save her. Should we go into Returns now? We kind of already are, you know, heading into Returns. But is there anything else about the first one?
No.
Nothing comes to mind for me either. So, what do you think is the one particular nail... If you had to say that Returns has a nail in its coffin...
The Rock.
Really?
The Rock CGI.
Yeah. But I was watching it back recently, and I was thinking, like, as bad as The Rock CGI is, that was the bad CGI that I remembered. Mm-hmm. What I didn't remember was the CGI is that bad most of the time. Mm-hmm. Like, even like you like the pygmies are funny. But every like I said, that army coming for it, everything looks so incredibly fake. And so
even like the cityscapes.
Yeah.
Like at the beginning.
It's kind of like the CG. It's as beloved as Gladiator is. Mm-hmm. There were some pretty bad CGI cities in it too. Mm-hmm. Like I said, and mixing that in with all the practical stuff, it's like, why don't you just stick to the practical? I know 2001 was like an experimental era. Like I said, we were going into the rings. It was like, let's see what we can do with CGI. But
I think before that, I think probably some of the at least decent CGI cities, and I know this is going to be blasphemy complimenting them, but the Star Wars prequels did the CGI cities pretty decently.
Yeah. I think a lot of people will agree with you, because I think the apart from the fan base that does love the prequels, like the praise does come from like everything about the prequels is fine except some of the acting and the writing especially.
They look very nice.
Yeah.
They're easy on the eyes. Not so much easy on the ears, but they're easy on the eyes.
And it can be hard to come to that conclusion because they've inspired so many shitty movies. Mm-hmm. But yeah, when you look at what they were doing at this time in the early 2000s, you were capable of so much more than we see in the movie Return. But in the whole idea, it is hilarious, especially in retrospect now, how much it was built up that The Rock is in. Mm-hmm. If I remember correctly, like any like sort of wrestling event, would they have still been WWF back then? Probably.
Yes.
And like they just plugged the absolute shit out of the fact that he was in it.
Mm-hmm.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, they still do that. There was a lumberjack match earlier in the year where the lumberjacks were zombies and they like ate The Miz and John Morrison. And at the end of the match, I shit you not, on the big screen above the arena, it displayed a giant poster for Armies of the Dead.
The Zack Snyder movie?
The Batista one.
Yeah, Zack Snyder made that. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah.
I did not.
And it was shit, by the way.
I'm not surprised.
But correct me if I'm wrong. The Rock himself is only in the opening scene, right? Because there's no way he had anything to do with that CGI.
No.
Like that can't even be motion capture. It can't be. It's way too poor. I am pretty sure Dwayne Johnson was only on the Mummy Returns set for that opening scene.
He was in it enough that it spawned a spin-off franchise. That only he was a part of only the first one.
Yeah, and it makes no sense because he was a short-lived. I don't know. Is he a villain in this? Because he's like under the control of Imhotep, but he's also I don't know. Scorpion King, the whole thing was so half-assed. And it's the fact that it was jarring to see him as like this full-on hero. That we know has like this very unceremonious death. The way Arnold also slides in and screams is fucking hilarious. But yeah, that like I said, the whole Scorpion King thing is so underdeveloped that it's like it's hilarious. Like if he was just played by some random, there would have never been a standalone movie, right? I feel like the standalone movie came from, dude, where the hell was The Rock in The Mummy Returns? And then, yeah, like you were saying, straight-to-video sequels all down the line. There are more straight-to-video sequels for The Scorpion King than there are Mummy movies.
And I think, the sad thing is I think they really could have made a scene work where, like, if they wanted to transform him into the Scorpion, do it later, but started out as just, like, hand-to-hand combat between Rick and the Scorpion King. Like, just the Scorpion King just is the Rock that comes out of the door. And then Rick like, it's very Power Rangers, but, like, Rick defeats him one-on-one, so then he becomes the Scorpion and goes from there.
Plus, it feels like I don't know if you want to call it retribution or revenge or what, but the fact that Dwayne Johnson basically plays Rick O'Connell in Jungle Cruise is hilarious.
Really?
Yes, and Blunt is very. This was the thing I didn't want to bring up because I was afraid I was going to piss people off. But obviously, Lily Houghton, the Blunt character in Jungle Cruise, is the significantly superior Evelyn. But don't tell anybody I said that because Rachel Weisz has her fans. But everybody knows my bias anyway. But no, I asked you at the beginning of talking about Returns what you thought the nail in the coffin was, and you essentially said The Rock. My answer is. They have a fucking kid. And what is always going to be the death of a movie if they have a fucking kid? And a kid that does very, very convenient things. I swear to God, they are reaching parody level shit when his clue to his whereabouts to them is an entire fucking sandcastle. Yeah, when they're busy going from place to place.
Yeah, like, Emotep never noticed that, Adebisi never noticed that.
There's also, and like I said, we can bring, pedantic shit into this, which may anger some people, because but I mean, when a movie is like, just has so many of these details that just start to stick out, it shows the setbacks of the movie in full, if you start noticing just the random, unimportant shit. Like, one thing that's bothered me for a while now is, when they are digging up Emotep again, does that construction equipment look so modern? I mean, that looks like they brought a crane in from the set itself. And it's like, this is what they dug him up with. And it's like, it looks so weird to me. I don't know.
He looks like, when he's, like, encased in all that stuff, like, he looks like, John Hammond's Kane in Jurassic Park.
Do you also get serious? Obviously, this would have predated this, so it's the other way around.
I want the DNA strand to come in and be like, in his little accent, like, this is Emotep. We're gonna break him out of the rocks.
Do you get when you rewatch Mummy Returns, even though it came first? Emotep and like the whole get up with the mask is like total Kylo Ren vibes, right? Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's the same voice.
I'm pretty sure too, with his mask and his little cloak. I'm pretty sure Emotep has been to the Eyes Wide Shut party.
Absolutely, he has. Like
he fucked someone at the Eyes Wide Shut party.
Well, yeah, because his lady friend is pretty useless. Just immediate death at one point, and then we've got whatever she's doing here. The Patricia Velasquez's character, and the way they're working Vice into that story, where she was like,
they're sisters. And we're going to pretend like that was it all along. Yeah. You would think Emotep would have noticed, like, in the first one, like, oh, you're the one that ratted me out.
Yeah, and of course, she gets, like, a fake death scene. Which is just the way to really draw out of me, where it's like, you get the whole, oh no, thing, and then, like, I always love the ending.
The little Bill, oh no!
Because she gets her big whole fake death scene that we know is not a real death scene, so we just gotta sit here like the audience and wait for her to come back to life.
Especially since they gave away in the trailer with scenes of her fighting.
And then it's like, I always want the scene at the end when they're like hanging off the side and the rocks are falling, and she decides to come back for them in her big heroic moment, and he's just like, no, keep running. It's like, I just want her to get crushed by one of the rocks and to say, like, not again, we just went through this. You just came back.
Do you think it would have made it any better if she died, was brought back, and was only brought back for that, and just like died again?
I don't know if it would have been better or if it would have just pissed me off even more because it would have been, what was the point? It's like that's what they did with fucking Morgan Freeman in Red. It's the dumbest shit I've ever seen. He fakes his death the whole movie and then just dies in the middle of the movie anyway. I'm sorry if I spoiled Red, that crucial piece of filmmaking, but I'm not even sure if Red is better than The Mummy Returns, while we're on the topic. But yeah, I don't know how I feel about this whole thing about, like I said, it holds the characters back. What's interesting is it holds the characters back so much, usually, when you bring a kid into the mix. But what's funny is the kid is an adult in the third movie, and I think it's even worse there. Like, when it gets to the point eventually where it's the syndrome of Antonio Banderas and Catherine Zeta-Jones in the Zorro movies, where when it starts off they're like equals, and then in the sequel they're like the bickering couple, and it's dumb. The whole bickering thing doesn't really come into play until 3, but still, it's just like...
It's like even Rachel Weisz was like, yeah, we're not doing that.
And it's like, I don't know if I know this. I feel like I heard the story at the time of why she's not in 3. If it was like a scheduling conflict or if she said, fuck this, I can't really remember. But she would have been an Oscar winner by then. Maybe she had the clout to say, I'm above Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
What year was Tomb?
2008.
Brendan Fraser was in a Best Picture by then.
Yeah, the same year Weiss won her Oscar. 2005. We do have new characters in this, though. What do you think of Izzy? He's very basic comedy relief, but he has moments that I still like. I like the fact that his eye patch is fake. And I like the whole bit.
Is it as good as the fake mustache in UHF, though?
Nothing's better than the fake mustache in UHF. The bit where he says... and it could have been one of those lines that was kind of dragged out too much, like comedy relief often does.
I love how your tastes are so sophisticated, but sometimes just the simplest joke landing the right way gets you.
That's...
Like the Frasier scene that I showed you earlier. Like, everything in there is so basic, but it cracked you up.
I do think the idea of my taste being sophisticated is up for debate, but it's... we'll say it's eclectic. How about that? I did just praise the Jackass trilogy recently. But I do love the moment when he says, when Izzy's talking about the last time they were together, and he says, last time I was with you I got shot in the ass. And then there's a continuation where he's like, I'm mourning my ass. It's like, that line shouldn't be funny, but it is. I think it's in the delivery. So I feel like that's what Izzy brings. It is, like...
Delivery makes a lot of difference.
Yeah. Do you think... Here's the debate. Is Izzy necessary for comedy relief when we still have John Hannah doing his job just fine?
Yeah, but if you didn't have Izzy to offset it, would John Hannah have gotten old?
Well, like we were saying, Oded Fair, whose character name I can't remember to save my life, was also, like you were saying, kind of lighter in this one. And I guess that's also up for debate if that's a good thing or not. His character. Well, there actually even is the moment when he's talking about the gloom and doom, and Rick like looks at him and says, "Dude, lighten up." And it's like maybe he did a little too. Maybe he took the advice a little too much. I don't know. Yeah. There's...
How did Oded Fur let this happen again?
Yeah, don't they even say, like, you were the one that was supposed to be watching him?
Yeah. This was your job. You had one job. .jpeg.
That's when we get involved in that whole thing of, like, half this movie is Rick saying, "Oh, this again," or Jonathan saying, "Oh, this again." It's like, that's funny at first, but then it's like, they're literally criticizing Stephen Summers from in front of the camera. And in a sense, it could be him criticizing himself, but then again, no, just be a better writer. Don't spend the script criticizing yourself when you can just write a little better. Like, don't say, I'm going to submit to these mistakes, and then just say they're the mistakes. That'll get me out of this. that'll get me this quick cash grab because Universal was like, all right, we made a shitload of fucking money. It's time we do it again. Write a script right now. Mm-hmm. It could be studio pressure. We may not have to put all the blame on him. But I mean, when the credit at the end is written and directed by Stephen Sommers, motherfucker looks guilty. Mm-hmm. I guess you could say the same thing about Ayer and Suicide Squad, but it's hard to say. But there's a lot of problems here. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's missing the horror element a lot?
It definitely plays more as like an action comedy.
There's that fucking pygmy jump scare that goes on for way too long. And it's like, I'm not opposed to a good jump scare. I just talked about the Candyman trilogy, and I talked about how a jump scare can really, really work. That medicine cabinet jump scare in Candyman. Mm-hmm. Or the Exorcist 3 jump scare, which is legendary. But I mean, there are times where you can really drag it out, and it can be good, like the Exorcist 3. But like, there's a whole process to that. Like, I talk about the jump scare in Exorcist 3 for like 10 minutes in the Exorcist 3 video I did. Mm. But there's a jump scare in The Mummy Returns when he's like reaching for the pygmy, mm-hmm. and it's like got its eyes closed, and it's just all curled up like this. Mm-hmm. You know it's gonna jump.
It's like Lex upstairs when he sleeps.
Yeah, when the cat is like sleeping really intensely is what it looks like. But we know that thing's gonna jump out, mm-hmm. and it lingers on this shot obscenely long. It is ridiculous how long that shot lasts, only for it to lunge out exactly. Like, if they had done something, like if another one like came up from behind him or something, that would have been one thing. Mm-hmm. But then it's the scare we're waiting on. It's just like, why did that take so long? Mm-hmm. We knew what it was. We always knew what it was going to be. Why did you wait? Maybe that was him trying to turn on his head, was waiting that long. Mm-hmm. Like I said, this is what happens with stuff like The Mummy Returns. You get caught up in this stuff that lasts for like a fraction of a second in the movie.
What if they would have held that shot and nothing would have happened, and right after we cut away from that shot, something happened?
That would have been pretty funny. And that thing would have just stayed asleep forever. That's the post-credits scene. It just fades back in, and it's just still really still. Then it just sits there for like 5 minutes, and then it fades out, mm-hmm. and then Universal logo. DVD menu.
What if the movie just stopped on that shot and like the rest of the whatever long's left, like 35 minutes, is just...
It's like the scene in Space Jam when the Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote leave the frame and then it's just the set. Oh man, that would have been a much more entertaining movie than whatever The Mummy Returns is. Maybe The Mummy Returns does have its fans. They're just not near as vocal as they are for the first movie. Mm-hmm. But I feel like especially now, like The Mummy Returns just gets more and more dated as it goes, especially visually. But how they handle a lot of stuff too. There is we talked about Suicide Squad. I believe the guy that plays Killer Croc is in this. Is the guy that's watching the kid the whole time. That's the thing too. Is the whole idea of bringing a kid into this. So we have scenes like, are we there yet? In a fucking Mummy movie. Mm-hmm. But the thing is I think I like this scene. And it's not because the kid keeps saying, are we there yet? Mm-hmm. It's that he keeps seriously answering no. Mm-hmm. Like he... it takes a long time for his tone to change. Mm-hmm. And of course when his tone finally does change, it's, I'm about to stab you. Mm-hmm. I do love that scene of, he slams the knife between his fingers and he's like, whoa, you have good aim. And he's like, what are you talking about? I missed. It's like, I love that. His death, for that character, his death is so abrupt. Mm-hmm. He's like the Ebony Maw of this movie. Mm-hmm. It was way too early, way too abrupt. We needed more of him.
I'm thinking, I wish his delivery also would have been like, could you imagine if his delivery was, I think it's Rush Hour 2, when the person, or it's the first one, when the guy's talking to Chris Tucker and he just keeps saying, I'm gonna slap you. I'm gonna slap you.
That's the second one. It's the cab driver. Yes, I know. That's something I'm not ashamed of. I know Rush Hour 2 very well. So that's a sequel that's like surprisingly worthwhile that came out right around this time. Mm-hmm. Was that the same 2001? That's the same year, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, we do have more action scenes. We have like the bus action scene where like we have the dude that's only got the top half of his body. And like that's fun in that sort of classic adventure way. But it still just feels like there's something missing. Like it's almost like it's droning on a little bit.
You don't think it's the fact that Rick and Evelyn take time to make out just for the kid to get taken again?
Yeah, that's. I don't know. There's so. I mean, once again, I don't know. Because like I said, I almost want to compliment The Mummy Returns because all the serious problems with characters having a kid is what they act like in the third movie. And so it's like this is another case of the third movie making another one look good.
Yeah, because the first one has a lot of fans. The second one has some fans. The third one,
I don't know. Ebert liked it, but I don't know anybody else. I don't think. I remember thinking it was harmless at the time, but I hadn't revisited the first one as much as I had. So at the time, the third one came out, when I was indifferent to one, I kind of felt like they were just on par. Like I said, I know it's sacrilege now, but like putting them all three together, I think recently was like the first time I've watched all three really close together, to kind of get a vibe of them again, because I don't revisit them as frequently as a lot of their like the diehard fans do. Because like I said, it's a movie that I wish I was more into, but I'm just kind of like I can appreciate it for what it is, and especially for what it was for its era. But I don't have like passion for any of these. But like that, I love that this sounds like a closing of the video. We haven't reached 3 yet. Well, is there anything else to really say? I do have something to say about Returns to End. Do you have anything else to say about Returns? Okay. Me talking about the fact that I recently rewatched them. I had seen Returns a couple times. I saw Returns. You got it on VHS right around the time the VHS came out, and I watched that then. And then I probably watched it maybe a couple times down there, probably on a movie channel or something. When I rewatched it recently, I remembered the rock stuff, and like everything else was like a brand new viewing. I was like, I don't remember any of this. Like, that is how unmemorable this is. I didn't remember like, not even vague, like, little bits of imagery stuck with me at all. I only remembered the rock stuff. And everything else was like, I don't think I've ever seen this movie. I have. But it felt like I had never seen this movie when I watched it back. And it's like, if I watch it again, like, however long down the road I'm like, let's give The Mummy Returns another go, will I remember any of this again? I have no idea. But, yeah, I'm shocked, because you said you haven't watched them recently. So I'm shocked at how much you remember. I love that you remember the dynamite. So yeah, is that basically the extent of Mummy Returns?
I think so.
All right, should we move on to the Bastard Child?
Yeah, the Bastard Child I don't remember much.
Well, Stephen Summers is now out of the equation. Now we've got Rob Cohen, the acclaimed director of Triple X. Is now in charge. He also did the first Fast and Furious, which we've praised in the past, and I still think is fun. But it's a mummy movie. It's an interesting choice.
So, are we saying that if Brendan Fraser wouldn't have come back, Vin Diesel would have been Rick O'Connell?
That would have been weird. But should we talk about the not-so-elephant in the room of why a lot of people hate this movie from the get-go?
Because Rachel Weisz is gone.
I have talked before about how Maria Bello is a very interesting actress, because she has so many performances where I can't tell if she's amazing or terrible, because she always really goes for it. But here, number one, she seems to be on autopilot. Number two, it's really weird to me that they cast an actress that's not British. That was a really weird call. And the fact that she's playing the same character. Like, I remember when the third one came out, and I knew Maria Bello was in it, I had assumed it was a different character. it's really weird that she's still Evelyn. And the fact that they draw attention to it especially is even weird. Like, you would think, okay, they're addressing it, but I mean, the fact that she sticks out enough already as a weird choice, it's not helping they draw attention to it. In the scene, where, I don't know if you remember the line where her opening scene, when we first see, oh, now it's Maria Bello as Evelyn. She's putting out a book about, like, their mummy adventures. And they say, hinting at the fact that it's her and Rick's stories. And somebody in the press says, is it true that it's you in the story? And she says, oh no, it's a completely different person. And it's like, you can tell they're drawing attention to the casting change here. Not helping.
Is the best address of a casting change Roseanne?
I like Roseanne's, and I like Jazz in Fresh Prince saying, you look different. So what's going on here? The whole relationship with Rick and Evelyn is obviously a very downer point in this movie. Like, think about the fact that Jet Li is the villain in this movie. Jet Li is a whole other monster in his own right. And immediately you're drawn by what happened to the Rick and Evelyn love story and the characters and all that. Not only are they bickering, but we get this really weird scene where she's trying to seduce him. And maybe they're trying to subvert expectations, because usually it's, oh, the guy's really horny and he comes into the room ready for seduction and the woman's asleep. And they do the reverse of that, where she comes in, wants to do foreplay, and then Rick's asleep. But her foreplay is like playing up their mummy adventures. It's like, hey, remember when this happened in one of the other movies? And remember how... And she's building it up like it's this sexy... It's fucking weird. It's a weird scene. And I don't... And it's like, it's Maria Bello just dissing her... Poor Maria Bello, distancing herself more and more from the people that are like, they're already pissed off about the casting change. And like I said, it's not helping they're drawing attention to it. And now this, it's like they were setting Maria Bello up for a fall. Maria Bello is a victim of this movie. and it's terrible. But then, yes, Jet Li is unleashed. Much like the movie he's in. It's the whole thing with their kid. Like, it's at first it sounds like the kid's being written out of the movie. Because they're like, they go through exposition land, where it's like, oh, our kid, oh, he hasn't been the same since he went off to college. Man, he sure has been gone long at college. That's why he's not here right now, because he's at college. And then it's like, oh no, he's in the movie. He's like a main character, and he's the one that sets this whole thing off, because he's trying to, bring his own name to it. Like, he does the whole thing where it's like, I don't want to be known as Rick O'Connell's son. I want him to be known as Rick, or whoever the fuck his name is, Alex, his father. That's what I want to be known as, and want him to be known as. And then he unleashes Jet Li and shit. And then and that's the plot. It is interesting, I think, and maybe this is something that people thought was a point against it, but to shake things up a little bit, I like the change in location, where we're in China now, and like the Shanghai scene and the Himalayas scene and stuff like that. And it's like we're so used to like Egypt and the sand and all that. But I mean, the Egypt and the sand is like, that's the setting. Like you were talking about, a lot of the iconic images from the first movie come from the sand. But I do think there's something in like jumping around locations a little bit. Like, the big action chase scene in Shanghai is fine. It also kind of drones on, like, the bus scene in Returns, but it's fine. That's an action scene where I almost kind of like how long it is. Because it has a sort of, like, epic feel to it. But then we get to, like, the Himalayas, and we talk about the CGI and the CGI sets and stuff like that. And I've talked before a lot about how I love how snow looks on film. That doesn't really translate to CGI. It looks very artificial and doesn't really have that appeal. Especially snow at night is, I think, especially what looks so good. And this is all, broad.
Does that come from seeing Batman Returns at such a young age?
I would say it has at least partially.
Because I remember when The Dark Knight Rises was coming out, one of the things that you were like, oh man, Nolan's Gotham under snow.
Yeah.
And it's just like flurries most of the movie.
Classic black and white movies, I think, play a big part in that too. Like Citizen Kane and It's a Wonderful Life, stuff like that used snow really well. And just those classic Christmas movies in general. Yeah, not so much here. Basically, it almost looks like remember way back in the day, like the movie channels or the pay-per-view channels you couldn't get, but if you went to them, you could like vaguely see something through white noise. It's kind of what the Himalayas action scenes feel like, is watching it through white noise. So that's, like I said, I like the ideas, but there's not. It's not that they're poorly executed. It's just that there's not much of an execution period. It's just like it's all there. And I think that's what you get from getting something like Rob Cohen to direct. It's clear like a director for hire job. Like this is not like Rob Cohen didn't come to this movie going, I'm going to give this my all. This is going to be my masterpiece. I don't know that Rob Cohen's ever walked into a movie and said this is going to be my masterpiece, but yeah, it's clear there were shortcomings from the get-go, and it didn't seem to be like it was trying to expand on them or do much with them.
With all the changes in it, it feels like a movie that was even lucky to get made.
Yeah, like it's lucky that it wasn't direct-to-video. It's like they were, let alone the fact that they were lucky enough to get John Hannah back. I think yeah, say what you will about Brendan Fraser, I'm worried about John Hannah's presence here. But, yeah.
It definitely feels more like a story that would have been told on, like, the short-lived animated series.
Yeah, and you probably could have done more with that. And it's, I was just having a conversation earlier today about how you can accomplish so much more with animation if you're, like, trying to continue something. But when you're doing it in movie form, especially when you're, like, half-assing it, it can just do so much damage.
Jet Li gets such a bad rap for doing long-delayed sequels. Between this and Lethal Weapon 4.
But there's also... I speaking of sequels and long-delayed sequels, one thing that I really love is when you watch the Tropic Thunder trailers at the beginning, the Scorcher movies, and the joke is that Ben Stiller says, "Here we go again," because that's like the trailer cliche when you're doing a sequel. And when Tropic Thunder was out, this was out around the same time. This trailer was out around the same time. And in the trailer for this movie, Brendan Fraser says, "Here we go again." Well, with almost the exact delivery Stiller does in the Scorcher sequel. And it's not, and it was a total coincidence. Like, Ben Stiller has talked about this. I think he talks about it on the commentary. The famous commentary where Downey doesn't break character. So yeah, this was basically just set up for fall. And there's the whole thing also where it's like trying to do the Indiana Jones thing still. Especially the scene where Jet Li gets unleashed. Like a bunch of Indiana Jones traps. There's even a spinning blade that's very Wild Wild West. But it just doesn't have the loveless spider on it or whatever it was. Michelle Yeoh's in this. And I feel like it's worth noting that this was 2008. So I wouldn't have said this back then, but nowadays I can say it. Michelle Yeoh is great. But I'm starting to think that Hollywood thinks there are no other Chinese actresses than Michelle Yeoh. Like, any blockbuster movie that comes out now that's even remotely China-related has Michelle Yeoh in it. And it's, I get the feeling you were about to ask me if she's in Shang-Chi or not. You bet your ass she's in it. Crazy Rich Asians, Michelle Yeoh's in it.
Well, even in the 90s, she was in Tomorrow Never Dies.
Yeah, I was trying to think, like, because, Crouching Tiger, it was like Michelle Yeoh and Ziyi Zhang were in everything for a while. Ziyi Zhang was in Rush Hour 2. And it's like, I keep forgetting that Tomorrow Never Dies actually predates Crouching Tiger by, like, 3 years. So it's like, it's Tomorrow Never Dies' fault. But yeah, she's still great.
Isn't Ziyi Zhang also the one in Memoirs of a Geisha?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. That's something I'd love to rewatch. I haven't watched that for a while. So, I don't really know if I have anything else to say. Like it's really just a movie that was just so tired on arrival.
I've only seen it the one time, and I don't remember a lot because a lot of it was like in one ear out the other.
Yeah,
Like nothing really made it stay.
And what's interesting about that is how much they're trying to pack into it. It feels like it has a lot in it. Like the Shanghai scene, the Himalayas scene, all the different stuff Jet Li can turn into. It's a busy movie, but at the same time, a lot of armies. I am sick of armies now. I was sick of armies in 2008. I think I was sick of armies after Return of the King. It was like, I think we've had enough of the army. And armies is like Hollywood's favorite thing. Alice in Wonderland got armies. Snow White got armies. Everybody's got fucking armies.
What about the armies in Infinity War and Endgame?
I gotta say, there are times in the Marvel Universe where I'm a little tired. As much as I love Black Panther. I'm wearing Black Panther merch right now. It gets old.
Every Avenger movie has a climax with an army.
And there was a certain point where it started to be a constant. And it's like, and we praise the Marvel movies constantly on this channel. I mean, I don't know how many Avengers videos me and you have done alone, but it's a lot. But my God, I am so sick of seeing armies collide, man.
Is there armies in Shang-Chi or Shang-Chi?
Yeah, but there's like creativity in the middle. There's little individual moments of fighting amidst the chaos. It's nice. The Last Duel just recently had some of that too, where it's armies colliding, but there's like nice choreography and like Last Duel I called it choreographed chaos, which is nice if they can pull that off. But when it's just what I always think of is the South Park movie when the armies collide and you can hear a chainsaw. I love that. That was such a perfect take on that, and that was before armies were a cliche. The armies like this one, obviously, we have the biblical epics.
Is one of the greatest armies fighting armies moments technically of all time in Blazing Saddles when the one guy's like, "I work for Mel Brooks."
I have my opinion.
What does he say before? Like, "Piss on you, I work for Mel Brooks," or something like that.
That sounds right. I've got some controversial opinions about Blazing Saddles.
Oh.
We haven't done that yet.
That one you have to tread lightly, too.
Yeah. Well, we said we were going to do a Mel Brooks video, but I hinted at doing, like, Young Frankenstein and Robin Hood and, whatever the other one. The other one that's, like, a specific Spaceballs, because they're, like, specific movies, and Blazing Saddles is, like, just more about a genre. But it has a lot of good things in it, but before this turns into the Mel Brooks video ahead of time, I don't even know when that video is going to exist. But, yeah. So, is that basically it?
I think so.
I'm not even sure how long we've gone. It's been a little over an hour, I think. So, yeah. So would you say... Oh, God. Normally I'd say rank them, but...
Does it go in chronological order?
I was going to say that, but I have such a hard time saying The Mummy Returns is better than another movie. But like we were saying, there's like things that are bad in the third movie that like highlight, oh, at least Returns didn't do that. So that's where the bar is. So it's basically like the first one is basically the standard for this, apparently, as far as these. But...
What do you think the third one would have looked like if Stephen Sommers was in the director's chair?
If you're asking me personally, I don't know if it would have looked any less bland.
That's what I was going to say. I don't feel like it would have looked much different.
I think the action would have been more chaotic. Because I said Rob Cohen has such a just sort of blandness to himself that's kind of what comes through. Like, at least, like, the action scenes in Mummy Returns feel like they drone on, but they're very lively still. Like, even if they're not great necessarily, they're not the peak of the trilogy. But yeah, I think that's just the thing. It's just the total, like, people talk about how Tomb of the Dragon Emperor is so bad. It's so bad. I think its problem is it's just fucking bland. But
it's just not much not much to go on.
The Rick and Evelyn stuff is pretty bad. That whole foreplay scene still just baffles me. Like, think about this. That foreplay scene, somebody wrote it, and then the script went through a whole process until it got to the set, and then when they were on the set, it probably took them a day or two to shoot that scene. They shot that scene. And then they watched it back, and they're like, we've got the shots. And then that foreplay scene, as it was shot, went to the editing room. Somebody watched that footage, decided that's the footage they needed, and they put it together in the final cut. Then that cut saw a producer in a studio. And that producer in that studio saw that foreplay scene, and they're like, this is good.
Couldn't you say that for a lot of movies, though? Like, they run into that?
Oh, yeah. You could say that about all bad scenes and all bad movies. But, I mean, this foreplay scene in particular is just baffling to me, that it went through that whole process, and people were like, that belongs in a Mummy movie. That. It's like, are people going to be pissed that we recast Rachel Weisz? Nah. This scene will be fine.
Okay, let me ask you, as somebody that wants to make films and direct them and write them, would you rather have somebody tell you, yes, I watched your movie, it was really bad, but I remember this, or would you rather somebody say, I watched your movie and I remember nothing about it? Like, it just went in one ear and out the other.
Well, I have somewhat experience with this from where I've had my scripts evaluated. And it's usually like... Because when you get those evaluations, they talk about the strengths, the weaknesses, and then the prospects about the appeal it would have as far as being financed. And it's usually... The strengths are usually, like, really... Like, this, I don't want to sound like I'm, like, blowing myself up, but they seem quite passionate. Like, even when the scores are low... Like, there was a whole time where I got, like, praise to the high heavens, and they said, the only problem is the length. And it was, like, a 7. Which is, like, average good. But it's, yeah, so I would take those moments where it's like, there was one, actually a better example to this. I just rambled on for no reason because I have a better example. I wrote a script that was, they gave it a poor score. They gave it like a 3. But the thing was, is they said it was deeply disturbing and unpleasant, but exceptionally written. So they hated it because of how effectively, I guess, it fucked them up.
Which is so funny, like, because there's been a lot of movies out there that are like that. They're like, this is the list of movies that people were like, I watched it, it was really good, but I have no interest in going back and reliving it.
Yeah, the fact that they gave it a 3, that's probably the proudest 3 out of 10 I will ever have, because they said exceptionally well written and deeply unpleasant. So, that's not what all my stuff is like, by the way. That was like that script's different than what I usually do. Like, I don't even know why I submitted it. Like in retrospect, I was like, why did I even bother? There was no way they were going to take to that. Yeah. So is that the Mummy Trilogy, more or less? Like I said, I wish I was more passionate, and I know if people are going to watch a video like this, it's probably going to be the passionate people, and they may not be happy, but that's how I feel. But, yeah. So would you say... Overall, like, are you a fan of the first movie, would you say?
I do like the first movie.
As I said, the fact that you didn't have to rewatch anything, and do you even know the last time you watched them?
Been a couple years.
And we've been able to carry on a back and forth. So.
Except for the third one.
Look, I don't think anybody's going to blame you. Like when you say, I haven't watched the first one, I haven't watched the third one since the first time I saw it, probably everybody that watches this will say, me too.
Like, when you talked about doing these, like, I wouldn't have minded rewatching 1. I wouldn't have even really minded all that much rewatching 2, but rewatching 3 felt like it was going to be a chore.
Yeah, because I gave you the option. I said, I'm going to do both one way or the other, but we can either do, me and you can either do the Mummy Trilogy or the Predator franchise. And you said the Mummy is because you, like, you're more familiar with them. So that's, Like I said, I remember you being a fan back when they came out because I remember you seeing and owning Returns.
Mm-hmm.
Did you only see Returns once in the theater? Or was it twice? Okay, I was thinking it was twice, but that would have been the year before you started working there. If you had worked there at the time, you probably would have seen it more than once because you saw like there's one of those cases where you took like all your friends. So there was like the 2002 2003 era where you saw every movie that came out like 6 times.
I think I saw the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 4 or 5 times.
My record is still Django, which I saw 6 times in the theater, and I'm very proud of that. So I don't care. So is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was sitting here trying to think if any Tarantino movies came out while I was working at the theater, but you had the Kill Bills and Death Proof.
Yep. Grindhouse came out when you were like on that on and off period, where you were like going to and from school at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember you came in just on because I still wasn't old enough to. I was a year off from seeing Grindhouse at the time to where they would let me in, so I had to wait for you to come back from school so I could see Grindhouse. And it was absolutely worth the wait, which we've done a video on Grindhouse, so they know already. All right, I guess we can end this. So like I said, my plan is to probably put this one out on Halloween, so that means by the time you see this, I will finally be done with these last 2 months. I'm still going to talk about, I think I'm going to do the Tremors series, like, it should be the next one after this, and then I'll be done for a while.
We'll get the bacon.
Yeah. I've been doing the Tremors franchise one movie at a time up to this point. And then I'll finish with the series, because everybody's recommending the series, so I wasn't going to do that, but it's been brought up enough now that I might as well. So, yeah, and then it'll probably just be the new releases through November for a while in our awards videos, because I'm going to be exhausted of this by then. I am already, but yeah. And then we'll see what comes up from there.
I mean, it probably does feel more exhausting for you when you do videos talking about movies like Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
Yeah. You would think just talking to a camera wouldn't be exhausting, but it's like, imagine doing a book report in school, and imagine doing that like 100 times in 2 months.
And half the time the books aren't even good.
Yes. So, yeah, and they're verbal, and I don't know if you can tell by this video or not, but I brought it up before. If you know me personally, when I'm not talking about movies, verbal is like this is a chore. Speaking is a chore to me. So, yeah. People have probably we're still running the camera. People are probably gone by now.
Or it's like the end of Ferris Bueller where he's like, "You're still here? Go home."
This video is going to appear a lot longer than it is. It's going to have like 10 extra minutes on it. That are like, people are like, "Oh, they talked about the Mummy for that long." No, we didn't. That's what most of our videos are, though. There's just like this bullshit period we do by accident.
And tangents galore.
Yeah. You are very tangent heavy, but I honestly don't mind. It's a nice break, because I feel so much pressure when it's just me talking to the camera. Like, when I do verses, I literally feel trapped in that corner. It's really, yeah.
My mind just goes all over the place.
I said, I like it more that it's a conversation. Like, me just trying to get everything out is... And I'm more likely to fuck up that way, too. And that's...
Plus, imagine if you did this movie without me, like... You'd have had no name for Adebisi. Like, I had Oz in my pocket that I pulled out to help.
So I can't even remember his character's name. I know the actor's name when I see it, I just have no idea how to pronounce it.
Adewale Akinoye Agbaje.
I usually try to look that stuff up, but his is a bit of a challenge, and I don't mean that as an insult or anything. I only just recently can say Yahya Abdul-Mateen II without stopping. He's the guy we were just talking about. That's in. He was Black Manta in Aquaman, and he's in the new Candyman. Yeah. He's really big. He's in the Watchmen show.
Adebisi's really good in Oz.
Is that, like, once I watch Oz, is that just what I'm going to call him, probably?
It's the easiest. Because he's very prominent, and then, like, he goes to film The Mummy Returns, and they just, spoilers, kill him off. His death scene's kind of cool, though.
Is that how that lined up?
Yeah, he left Oz to go do The Mummy Returns.
Oh man, was it worth
I
it?
don't know. Oz was a good show. It's like those movies. Like, it was good. Am I ever going to watch it again? Probably not, because it's kind of dark and depressing. But while I was watching it, it was good. J.K. Simmons knocks it out of the park. But that's like saying bread is made of toast. Like, J.K. Simmons always knocks it out of the park. The fact that we don't have more of J.K. Simmons as Jim Gordon is a crime.
We could be getting there if they make certain decisions, but I guess we'll find out.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Should we call this?
Yeah, I think we've tangented long enough.
This is another thing about when I do the videos with you also. Sometimes I kind of forget the camera's there. Which is probably not where we want to be, but yeah.
But the good news is if we ever did go on too long, you could always just lop it off.
Yeah. I still have a very, like, primitive editor.
I knew you were going to use the word primitive. I don't know why, I just did.
I had to use it. I think I had to use it when I did the as of today. Yesterday, I did the Halloween Kills last duel video, and I think I said it there too. So yeah. All right. So it's So in all the other videos, I've been saying, hey, we got all this other stuff coming, but if this goes out on Halloween, no, we don't. It's all fucking over finally. So I guess until whatever November is.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it?
Yeah.
All right.